Jesus, often imagined as a figure of gentle submission, actually provides a sharp field guide for confronting narcissistic power, revealing 10 powerful moves against manipulation and false peace. This perspective, outlined by Dow in the book I Expose Narcissists, 10 Ways Jesus Confronted Narcissistic Power, challenges our conventional understanding of Christ's character and offers practical tools for navigating some of the most difficult relational dynamics we face today. Evelyn, the author, makes a point to clarify what they mean by narcissist right at the beginning. Can you explain that distinction?
Yes, it's crucial. The book uses the term narcissist as shorthand for specific patterns: manipulation, entitlement, image protection, blame shifting, coercive control, and contempt. It's not a clinical diagnosis for every difficult person, nor a replacement for professional help. Instead, it's about recognizing these deeply ingrained spiritual patterns that Jesus exposed long before modern psychology gave us this vocabulary. The author also clarifies this as a companion field guide to the larger work, How Jesus Dealt with Narcissists, which explores 12 gospel incidents in more depth.
So it's less about labeling individuals and more about identifying these harmful behaviors, regardless of their source. The author calls this throne logic and devil's charity. What does that mean, and why is this approach to Jesus' actions so important? This reframing is key because the book isn't about making readers suspicious of everyone, right? It's about discernment that still knows how to love.
Precisely. The deepest issue isn't just a label, it's narcissistic power, or throne logic, which is any counterfeit form of love that helps in ways that maintain control. Devil's charity refers to this manipulative pseudo-love. This book's Jesus isn't a passive mascot or a reckless counter-narcissist. He's calm, piercing, protective, and free. He offers a path for those taught that holiness means making abuse easier to manage, or that forgiveness demands immediate access. It's about discernment that still knows how to love without falling into cynicism, because cynicism is just another captivity.
That's a significant reframing. Let's delve into these 10 moves Jesus made. The first one is about refusing their frame. What does that look like?
Jesus refused the manipulator's frame. In the Gospels, many public conflicts began with trap questions like, should tribute be paid to Caesar? These weren't honest inquiries. They were cages designed to limit reality, so every answer benefited the questioner. If Jesus answered one way, he could be accused of rebellion. Another way, of cowardice. The book says, quote, I did not worship the question. I answered from a deeper law. End quote. This isn't evasion, it's protecting truth from being processed through a lie.
It sounds like identifying the game being played rather than playing it. But in a modern context, how do you refuse a frame without appearing uncooperative or defensive, especially when the manipulator is defining your refusal as proof against you?
The key is to name the frame before answering the content. For example, if someone says, so you think I am a terrible parent, when the real issue was a specific pattern of contempt, you can respond, that is not what I said. The issue is this behavior. You're asserting the true issue. The book's line to carry here is, I do not owe a manipulator the frame he is using to control me. It's about refusing to prove your goodness to someone who benefits from your confusion.
That's a powerful distinction. The second move is walking away from spectacle. What kind of spectacle are we talking about here?
Narcissism loves a stage, demanding proof, display, applause, and public reaction. Jesus refused to make his identity depend on such spectacle. The tempter in the wilderness, for instance, challenged him to prove he was the Son of God through dramatic displays. This demand for performance is a narcissistic pattern where someone tries to make you prove your worthiness in a way that leaves them as the judge. The test is never finished because the point is keeping you performing.
So, it's about not letting someone else's reaction define your reality, but it seems challenging to discern when to engage and when to walk away, especially when there's genuine need for accountability or clarification. How do you distinguish between legitimate engagement and feeding a spectacle?
The book advises pausing to ask whether the request serves repair or spectacle, whether it lifts a burden or feeds a watcher. Jesus refused to perform when performance was meant to control him or entertain those who wouldn't truly believe. The line to carry is, "I do not have to perform for contempt." You are allowed to decline a test that exists only to keep you auditioning and choose fruit over theater.
And the third move is protecting the shamed. This seems to be a fundamental aspect of Jesus' ministry.
Absolutely. Narcissistic power often singles out a shamed person first, pointing, accusing, and gathering witnesses. Jesus consistently moved toward those labeled as sinner or unclean. He killed a Saul of any throne to turn a person into disposable proof of someone else's superiority. While he didn't deny sin, he denied the system's right to reduce a person to a label. This counters shame management, where one person carries the burden to avoid deeper repentance by the group.
It sounds like a direct counter to scapegoating. How does this challenge the way groups often deal with problems by assigning blame to one person?
In families, churches, or workplaces, one person is often assigned the burden of being the problem. This allows the group to avoid deeper repentance. Jesus' approach reveals this shame management. He restored dignity where shame had become social currency. The book says, "I am not the container for everyone else's shame." It's about seeking truth without feeding contempt and distinguishing between repair and sacrifice, especially when a system needs your guilt to accomplish its own goals.
That's profound. The fourth move is naming false holiness. This is where Jesus confronted religious leaders directly.
Yes, his fiercest words were often for leaders who sounded righteous but loaded burdens onto others. Their religion had curved back toward themselves, using law as leverage, purity as rank, and prayer as theater. Jesus named this pattern, refusing to let sacred language protect rotten fruit. This is critical because false holiness is a powerful shelter for narcissism. Victims in religious systems often feel guilty for noticing harm because they're told their discomfort is rebellion.
So it's about looking beyond the outward display to the actual impact. How can people apply this in their own lives without becoming cynical about all religious practice or spiritual leaders?
The key is the burden test. Around this person or system, who gets lighter and who gets heavier? Who is asked to sacrifice and who is protected from sacrifice? The book emphasizes holy language does not sanctify harmful fruit. The goal isn't humiliation, but release for those suffocating. It's about discerning true holiness, which moves toward mercy, judgment, and faith, from false holiness, which prioritizes image, rank, and burden loading.
Moving on to the fifth point, refusing unlimited access. This seems counterintuitive to the idea of a loving, open spiritual figure.
It seems counterintuitive, but it's vital for discernment. Jesus loved fully, but did not entrust himself to everyone. He fed, taught, and healed crowds, but also withdrew to pray or allowed distance. Narcissistic power hates this distinction, treating access as proof of love. They'll say, "If you loved me, you would answer now, come now, explain now." They call your discernment cruelty because your boundary interrupts their entitlement.
So, love doesn't equate to unlimited availability or vulnerability. But for many, especially in faith communities, setting boundaries can feel selfish or unchristlike. How does Jesus' example help reframe that?
Jesus taught his followers to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Harmless doesn't mean boundaryless. Wise means you don't let someone else's demand redefine love as self-erasure. The book's line to carry is, "Love is not unlimited access." You can love someone and not tell them everything. You can pray for someone and still decline a meeting or a call that will be controlling. It's about watching for access tests and seeing if a person respects a small no or escalates.
That leads perfectly into the sixth point, separating forgiveness from access. How are those distinct in Jesus' teaching?
Jesus taught forgiveness because unforgiveness can be a prison, but he never taught that forgiveness means pretending fruit doesn't matter. Many people are harmed by a counterfeit gospel that collapses forgiveness and access into one demand. The abuser says, "If you forgive me, you must let me back." But forgiveness may be offered from the heart, while restored access belongs to wisdom, truth, and fruit.
This is a huge point of confusion for many. Forgiveness is often presented as an immediate, unconditional reopening of the relationship. What did Jesus' post-resurrection appearances teach us about this?
After the resurrection, Jesus returned with wounds still visible. He spoke peace, but didn't pretend the violence hadn't occurred. The wounds remained as witness. Peace didn't require amnesia. So, the book distinguishes three categories: forgiveness, reconciliation, and access. Forgiveness releases vengeance. Reconciliation is a repaired relationship built on truth. Access is the practical doorway. They're not identical. The line to carry is, forgiveness is not a return ticket to my life. It's about asking for fruit, not just feelings.
The seventh move is exposing false peace. What does false peace look like in this context?
False peace asks the wounded to become quieter so the powerful don't have to become better. Jesus didn't mistake silence for peace. He healed on days when leaders preferred order over relief and confronted hypocrisy. His peace restores the person, false peace protects the arrangement. The narcissistic pattern is peacekeeping through suppression, where the person naming harm is identified as the source of conflict, while the person causing harm remains protected.
So, a quiet room isn't always a peaceful room if it means truth is being suppressed. This resonates with how many institutions or families prioritize an outward appearance of calm over genuine healing.
Exactly. The book notes that the person who names the wound is often then treated as the wound. Jesus' peace isn't fragile. It can survive truth, repair, and accountability. The line to carry is, peace that requires erasure is not peace. It encourages us to ask if peace requires repentance from the person causing harm or only silence from the person naming it.
Next is overturning exploitative tables. This is one of the most vivid images of Jesus' direct action.
Indeed, when Jesus entered the temple and found buying and selling, he saw access being organized through extraction. The sacred center had placed tables between God and the people. This wasn't random anger, it was moral intervention. The goal of this disruption wasn't chaos, but restored access for the burdened. The narcissistic pattern is extraction disguised as service, where a system positions itself as a gateway to help, then harvests money, admiration, or loyalty.
This connects directly to the idea of devil's charity, where help becomes a toll booth. How do we identify these tables in modern life, especially when they're disguised as generosity or mission?
Exploitative tables appear wherever help is made expensive in hidden ways. The cost might be money, but it could also be loyalty, silence, unpaid labor, or emotional supply. The question is, who gets heavier and who gets lighter? The book's line to carry is, a sacred system is not holy if it feeds on the weak. It calls us to find the table, identify the toll, and see who truly benefits.
The ninth move is standing silent before bad faith power. This seems to contradict the previous point of active confrontation.
It's a crucial distinction. Jesus stood silent before Pilate and his accusers, not because he was afraid, but because words would only be consumed by a machine that didn't want truth. This silence wasn't surrender to the lie, it was a refusal to let the lie set the terms of his soul. The narcissistic pattern here is process as theater, where the powerful ask for explanations that are never genuinely received, but recorded, twisted, or delayed to create an appearance of fairness.
So it's about recognizing when further explanation is futile and simply fuels the manipulator's narrative. How does one discern when silence is a boundary versus avoidance?
Silence is avoidance when truth needs to be spoken, and fear is the only reason you withhold it. It's boundary when the truth has been spoken, the listener has shown bad faith, and further speech would only feed the machine. The line to carry is, I do not have to keep speaking where truth is being consumed rather than received. It's about preserving your witness and sanity, not letting an unfair process become another form of captivity.
And finally, the 10th move, rising after they buried the truth. This brings us to the ultimate act of Jesus.
This reveals the full machinery of narcissistic power: betrayal, religious accusation, political cowardice, public shame, and burial. The system believed it had contained the witness, but the resurrection broke the final claim. It showed that a lie can become official without becoming true, and a body can be buried without the witness being owned forever. Jesus rose with wounds still visible, transforming them into witness, not proof the system was right.
This speaks directly to the experience of scapegoated individuals, whose truth is often buried by systems that refuse to metabolize it.
Yes, scapegoating creates emotional simplicity, where one person carries the stain and the system avoids repentance. The resurrection is the opposite. It declares that the verdict of threatened power is not the verdict of God. The line to carry is, a buried witness is not the same as a defeated truth. It's a message of hope that truth can return after burial, and a person can be publicly misnamed and still be held by God in a deeper record.
It's clear that this book, I Expose Narcissists by Dow, offers a profound and practical reframing of Jesus' ministry. It moves beyond a passive view of Christ to present him as an active, discerning leader who directly confronted manipulative power, offering a path for those seeking truth and healing without becoming consumed by bitterness or revenge. If today's conversation offered you a fresh perspective, consider sharing this episode with someone who might benefit from hearing it.